Hey guys, how's it going? So today we're going to be working in this new area that we just put together out in the cut flower garden. I want to give you an update first of all on how everything's doing because it's looking really good, but there's also a lot of weeds we need to take care of. I'm going to spray the pumpkin vines, so I'll talk about that a little bit, and then I've got seeds and plants to put in the ground as well. First off, just standing back so you can get an idea of what the whole space is like. This area is 60 feet long, 45 feet wide, except for in this corner it does go in 13 feet just to create this little kind of design. And if I twirl around here, I'll try to go slow, you can see that it does that in every section, because right here in the middle, about where I'm standing, we do want to put a fountain and maybe some benches in each one of the corners just so that we have a place to sit out here and just to make it a little bit more decorative. Everything's doing really well. It is a little bit breezy out here today, but it's making it very pleasant to be out here working. In 2 days, we have, the forecast says 105 degrees. So today's supposed to be 85. I'm gonna soak it in. So in this area here, which ends up being what, like 27 by 13, we have 21 tomato plants, which are all doing fantastic. Look at the growth on these. These are all the Titan tomato frames from Gardener Supply. I went over all of that in the video where I put this area together, but I am getting growth and we are getting some fruit starting to form up. Look at those, they're gorgeous. These are the Bosque Blue bumblebees right here. I've been checking them every day. They're not ripe yet. So with this area being tomatoes, this spot right here ended up being 52 feet by 45 feet. And we put all of these ranch panels up around the exterior to create kind of a secret garden feel in the end, because we've got sunflowers planted around the entire exterior. And they're all coming up great. I thought I would walk through because in the last video, I didn't even talk about what varieties we planted, and there are a whole bunch. So first variety here is Astra Rose Cream, all looking good. Sunrich Lime, Gypsy Charmer. Something's going on in this area. With these three. I might repeat plant these, but look at this. It's like they're coming up and burning. It's the weirdest thing, especially because everything else looks so healthy. But Gypsy Charmer, Red Hedge, which there's hardly any of, and Starburst Lemon Aura. And then we've got the good old autumn beauties here, right along the back side. And right here we've got Velvet Queens. We've got Drop Dead Red, Heirloom Beauties, Evening Sun, Chocolate Cherry. Not great over here on the chocolate cherries, but I've got plenty on the back side as well. This is the only one that I planted on both sides. And then on this side we have ProCut White Nite. Next one is ProCut Lemon, ProCut Plum, ProCut White Lite, and Sunspot. So that's 15 varieties of sunflower, which will be really pretty once they are up and blooming. Now all of these ProCuts along this side right here, I'm gonna plant again today on the back side of the fence because they are a single stem sunflower, so you get one cut from those, and we have enough time left in the season to plant them today. We also have corn in here. So this is where kind of the maze factor comes in. We put another row of ranch panels in here because when the corn is tall and the sunflowers are tall, it'll feel like a little maze for the kids. I think they'll really like it. They've actually loved being in here. They like to come sit at the bistro table quite a lot. But the corn's looking good. We're gonna plant the next crop of corn today on the back side of the fence. First crop was planted June 2nd, so this one, that was 22 days ago, it's June 24th today, so we'll plant that one here so that we have a successive harvest, which will be very nice. But you can see all the corn's looking good, but do you see all the weeds in here? There's a whole bunch of, mostly, it looks like puncture vine. Yep. Look at all these. Pretty thick in here, really. Back in there's an opening so you can get back into the maze there. Then I brought out a bunch of just used bricks that we had stored back behind our orchard fence and just dry stacked those in this area. These are roughly 8 by 8. I do need to come in and I'm gonna need help with this part, but to get the pots leveled, I knew they're so heavy that they would settle a bit after we started really watering them. Planted some calendula, the Lady Godiva yellow calendula right here. We had this Gothic arch trellis from a couple of years ago that we put up. I just noticed this morning that the coconut appeal black-eyed Susan vine is utilizing some of the twine. That's so exciting to me. Worth it. I also planted some Ruby Moon hyacinth beans in between each one of the coconut appeal black-eyed Susan vines. They came up okay here and here. None of them came up here. So I think I'm going to transplant just at least one or maybe two to this little section. And then on either side of the trellis, we have 3 pumpkin vines. In this spot, we have 2 Howdens, which are a really productive, nice like jack-o'-lantern type pumpkin, and then Jack Be Little, which are the little orange ones. In this section, we have Casperita, which are kind of smallish, small to medium-sized white ones. Cinnamon Girl is a medium-sized orange, and Wolf, which are the large orange ones that have huge stems, really thick stems. And right up front here, we have 2 types of zinnias. We have some taller zinnias that grow 40 to 50 inches tall on the back row. And then in the front, we have some that grow fairly or stay fairly small. Not super great germination rate on the smaller ones. Better on this side. I don't know, kind of weird. Either way, that's a lot of zinnias, and they will fill in and be a beautiful like living fence up here. And a couple of containers right up here that have salvia and geraniums and some lantana. So there's really a tremendous amount going on in this area, and it's just so cute. I think it formed up so beautifully. On paper, I actually had it more intense than this. I always feel like, well, on paper, you can fit everything. You can fit the world in one little spot in your garden. And then when you actually start bringing stuff out, you kind of realize the scale of everything, and you have to scale it back. But I think we were able to fit a lot in here, and it's just been so much fun. The first thing I think we should tackle is the kind of crummiest of all the jobs, and that's to get all the weeds removed. So we'll go through, do that quickly, and then we'll probably go in with our seeds. I do have some plants to plant underneath the urns today, but I'll just stop in between each step and kind of explain what I'm doing. For both weeding and seed planting today, I'm just going to be using this hoe. This one's from Fiskars, aluminum hoe. That's what it's called. I have bent it somewhere along the way. But this is what I typically use to plant seeds, because I can just dig it in the ground, make a little furrow. It works really well. But I'm just going to use it today for both seed planting and weed removal. So we'll come along, find our weeds, and I'm just going to do, you know, one of these. Rough them up. I used to never use a tool to cut off weeds at the soil surface. I used to be a firm believer in hand pulling weeds to get the roots. But you know, over the years, and especially as we have expanded the amount of area we're taking care of, I have relaxed on that a little bit. It's much easier to go through and just pop them off at soil surface. And if you keep on top of it, you weaken them pretty fast, and it's usually not a problem after too long. And that way, you know, we can stand the whole time and we can just walk through this whole space, get the weeds handled, and move on to the fun stuff. So let's get that done first. Step 1 of weeding is done. Took about 30 minutes. I did hand weed around our seedlings because I couldn't get the tooling close enough without hurting the seedlings, but for the most part I just used the hand tool and just whipped through it pretty quick. And we have found that if we try to stay on top of the weeds once a week, if we look at each section of our garden just one time per week, we can typically keep on top of the weeds. And then by the really hot part of the summer, usually by like middle of July or so, the bulk of the weeds have been taken care of, and we're just having to do one here and there instead of like the big carpet that usually comes in the springtime. So while there were a lot of little weeds in this space, I mean, you could see that they weren't huge or they hadn't overtaken the space, and it was really easy to handle them. So like right in here, you can see where I cut the weeds off, and those weeds are so small, I just leave them right on top of the mulch. They will dry up and pretty much disappear. And it does mess up the mulch a tiny bit, but not bad. We walk around in here enough that it usually packs it right back down. I always try to get the crummiest of all the chores done first. That way I have all the rest of the stuff to look forward to. So we're gonna plant corn next. And like I mentioned before, the first crop of corn we planted on June 2nd, not August 2nd, which means that we can harvest about August 15th. It's Ambrosia, a 75-day bicolor corn. It's really tasty and delicious, and it does really well here. So today, June 24th, we're planting our second crop, which means we can harvest roughly around September the 6th or so. Typically with your later harvest, you may have to, depending on your fall temperatures, you may need to add a week or so onto the maturity day. So instead of 75 day, you might consider it an 80 or an 82 day. Not really for us because we're typically really hot still about September 6th, but we could technically grow another crop of corn maybe in a week or two. We could plant another one and harvest it late September. And in that case, I would say you would maybe need to add a little bit of extra time onto that maturity day. Bless you, is that a sneeze? Hi. Benjamin is going to help me plant corn because he planted all these corn seeds before. You ready? So I've got our bag of corn seed here. I've already come along with the hoe when I was weeding. I just went ahead and made our little furrow. We typically go about a ½ inch deep with our corn seed. So Benjamin's already started in. There are 2 seeds every 6 inches or so, and we're planting it in between the corn that's already here. So that would be, yep, that's perfect. Yep, 2 little seeds right there.
And then I'll plant.
Yep, and cover them right on over.
Yeah, and then they'll grow.
Uh-huh. Great job. You ready to keep on going?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is it right here now?
Uh-huh. So next one is in between these 2 right here. So right in this space, 2. And we just do that all the way down. As soon as we're done planting all the seeds, we're gonna come along the front and thin these. So I'm gonna bring a pair of pruners out and we'll just clip one out and leave one standing. That way it has plenty of room to grow and they don't crowd each other out. I would say we have pretty good germination rate though. Here, look at that, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. I mean, I think there's 2 on pretty much all of these. You here to plant corn too?
Yeah.
Is this your second row of corn?
Yeah.
Nice.
So this one is a September 6th harvest, August 15th harvest on the first one.
Oh, cool.
And I think if we find another spot, we could do a 3rd crop for like a late September harvest.
Yeah.
And we can have corn for days and weeks.
I love corn. I could honestly eat it for like just about every meal.
That's perfect. We'll have it for just about every meal. In between the corn, Benjamin. So that's lining up a little bit too much. So you need to plant this one about here because it goes in between those other 2. Yep. Perfect, 2 seeds. Okay, we're gonna get the corn planting and corn thinning done, and then we will move on to the next thing. Corn is done. Now I did notice as I was planting that I ran 2 rows of drip right here, one for this side of the panel and one for this side. So the seeds planted here will do great, but I did not do that over here. I'm not sure why. So I think what I'm gonna end up having to do, because I've got a row of drip tape on this side, and I just don't think it's gonna be enough for 2 rows. It might be, but I doubt it. So I think I'm gonna have to couple in right here and then run a 2nd row of drip tape on this side, and I'll have to do the same thing over there too. Almost forgot about my thinning, so I have my Felcos here, and I'm just gonna go through, and instead of pulling the extra one, I'm gonna cut it. That way I don't disrupt the root system of the one that I want to leave behind. But that will be perfect. Corn is thinned, it's looking really good and healthy. Now I am gonna have to come through and thin these sunflowers like big time. I was pretty heavy-handed. So I'll do that though on a different day because that's gonna be a little bit longer of a chore. But today we will replant those varieties, the ProCut varieties, because they are only 50 to 60 day. So those were also planted on June 2nd, so they should be ready to pick by the first part of August. The ones we plant today will be done by mid to late August. And kind of just like corn, I go about 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep with the seeds and space them out about 6 inches. And I'm pretty sure we have some of every one of them. ProCut lemon, there's white Lite, Plum. Do we not have white Nite? Where did that one go? Did it blow? Oh, it blew away. Thought we had some. My goodness. Yep, white Nite. And I lost Benjamin to Aaron. They're fertilizing right now. Okay, so I went in, planted my second row of sunflowers. I did a second row of sunspots right here as well because those just produce one huge flower on them and they don't get quite as tall as the ProCut. So ProCuts will get, you know, I think 4 to 5 feet, well, more like the 5 feet size, and sunspots stay about 3 feet. So I thought they'd be kind of perfect in line with this container, which is doing really well. Bermuda Beach is looking a little stressed, but everything else looks really good. I also filled in the gaps in the chocolate cherry, so hopefully, and I used more seeds. I'm wondering if maybe it's a germination rate thing. I have had those seeds for a while, so I kind of doubled up and filled in the spaces there. And I did the same thing over here with the red hedge and the Starburst lemon aura. Okay, now that that is done, I'm gonna plant beneath the urns. I've got bunny tails grass, finally gonna get some of those in the ground, and some Supertunia Vista bubblegum. Guys, got the planting done. It doesn't look awesome today, but it will look awesome, I think, in a couple of weeks. This right here is a good practice in faith in planting, because let me tell you what, these bunny tail grasses, so I started these from seed. I did the same thing last year. The ones I planted out last year, I waited really long to do that too. I don't know why. They actually looked worse than this. And it didn't take them but maybe little over 2 weeks, and they started to thicken up and fill in, and they were the most gorgeous grasses. So I think with the design we have going here, it's gonna be beautiful. So we have the urn as the centerpiece, and then we have from the corner of the urn to the corner of the bed on each side, I did 2 rows of the grasses, spacing them about a foot apart or so, and then I did one, like the second row, I did in between the 2 over here. So there'll be just this thick, beautiful design. And then I just did 1 Supertunia Vista bubblegum in between them to fill in kind of that triangle that's left. So I think it's going to be really pretty, and I think it will stay low enough, because this is about how high the grasses get right here. Everything will stay low enough to where it looks like it's elevating this urn up, and we'll still be able to see some of the detail there, which I think is important. And there's that one, same exact thing. The pots are looking really good. Everything in here, they've been just running off of a drip system since that first initial day, so I'm really happy about that. And I did go ahead and I transplanted 2 of the Ruby Moon hyacinth beans from different sections over to this one where there wasn't any. So now we'll have some of that detail between each one of these coconut peel, and so those are a beautiful vine with purple flowers, so we'll have the purple and white. It will be very, very pretty. And the very last thing I was going to tackle today was spraying our vine crops preventatively for squash bugs. I use this right here. That's what I'm going to be trying this year. I'm just staying on a consistent spray schedule because I only have, well, the 6 pumpkins in here, and then I've got 2 cucumbers, which typically the squash bugs leave alone, but I do have 2 butternut squash plants elsewhere. But it's a far smaller amount of vine crops than I'm used to planting, at least for the last couple of years. And squash bugs, if they take hold, which they do in our area, if you don't do any preventative care, they will arrive at your pumpkin patch eventually. If it's a raw piece of property or raw piece of land, typically you can get away with at least 1 season with a clean crop, maybe 2 before they start showing up. So last year they didn't show up until the very end of the season, and they did take a couple of our vines, and they're the worst. They reproduce so fast. The babies are so creepy looking, and they suck the juices out of the leaves of your plants, and oftentimes you'll find a bunch of eggs underneath the leaves, and if you don't get on top of it once adults are present, it's a really tough thing to handle. Best thing you can do is prevention on this type of a bug crop. So, you know, checking them every single day. Look under the leaves. If you see little lines of eggs, that's where they lay them, right underneath leaves. A lot of times they'll be like on the bottom leaves. I'm not seeing anything, thank goodness. Early morning or late in the evening, like at dusk, is probably the best time to check for them. Right in the middle of the afternoon when it's really quite warm like it is right now, they'll usually cluster at the base of the plant, kind of where it's cooler and shaded, so you can check right in there. You don't want to spray right in the middle of the day, because even though this is an organic, it's sulfur pyrethrins, it's still a contact killer, and it can still hurt pollinators, so you want to use it responsibly no matter if it's an organic or a synthetic. So dusk is usually my preferred time, so I'm not going to even spray them right now. I'll do it later. Floating row covers is your non-spray method of keeping squash bugs at bay. I would love to use that, but I have the hardest time without creating, I think, some sort of like permanent structure around where my vine crops are. You know, you get that fabric, it's a very lightweight fabric, and I cannot keep it pinned down because our fierce winds come through here and it either blows the fabric away, it bends whatever thing it's on, attached to, or like a corner of the fabric loosens and then it wraps around my plant and damages it somehow. I haven't had the best of luck there. So I tend to like to use a spray regimen as long as I can keep up on it. So this one is a sulfur pyrethrins. I think I already said that. We'll do that about once a week, and usually we can stay on top of any kind of infestation, or we hope. And if we can start when the plants are young and small, that's best too, because once they start vining out and getting huge, it's hard to get things sprayed because you want to make sure you get all the surface area, top side of the leaves, underside of the leaves, stems, and the more you have there to spray, the more product you're going to have to use. And it's a pain. It's a total pain, like I'm not gonna lie. So I prefer to do it when my plants are this size, right here. So I'll be spraying these 6 plants in here, and then right over here is where I planted my 2 butternut squash plants. We should probably check these out. I've got a bunch of, this looks like, is this amaranth? But I've got celosia seedlings coming up too in here. Butternut squash looks clean. And that is going to be it for today's project. I hope that this video was helpful. Maybe just seeing some of the things that you can still be planting. And these aren't even part of my fall crops technically. It's just my first round. If you can succession plant every couple, 2 or 3 times every couple of weeks for certain crops, you can get a lot more yield out of them later on. Fall crops we're typically planting mid to late July usually, and that will involve some of the shorter day sunflowers and things like that as well. And we'll be talking about that when I get ready to do that. We have done videos about it in the past though, so all the flowers you can start later on and or vegetable crops. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.